On our 30th anniversary night, he publicly rejected me as too old at 60. Then I gave him a gift that. The house felt different that morning. It was not louder, not brighter, but heavier in a quiet way. The kind of feeling that comes when something important is about to happen. The woman woke up before the alarm, her eyes opening slowly as sunlight touched the curtains. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the soft sounds of the home she had lived in for decades. The ticking clock. The distant noise of traffic. The familiar walls that had seen her youth, her struggles, and her growth. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Today was their 30th wedding anniversary. She sat up slowly, careful with her movements. At 60, her body did not move the way it once did, but her mind was sharp, full of memories. As her feet touched the floor, she smiled to herself. 30 years. It felt like a lifetime and a moment at the same time. She thought about the early days, when everything felt uncertain but exciting. When love meant building something from nothing. She walked toward the bathroom mirror and paused. The woman looking back had soft lines on her face, silver in her hair, and tired eyes that had seen many nights without sleep. But there was pride there too. A quiet pride. She did not see age as loss. She saw it as proof that she had lived, endured, and stayed. She touched the small necklace around her neck, the same one she had worn for years. It was simple, not expensive, but it held meaning. Like many things in her life. Downstairs, the house was already awake. Decorations had been placed the night before. Flowers sat in clear glass vases. The dining area looked warm and elegant, filled with soft colors and gentle light. Family members would arrive later. Friends would come. Laughter would fill the rooms. This was supposed to be a celebration of love, of shared history, of gratitude. She moved into the kitchen and began preparing breakfast. She liked doing things herself. Always had. Cooking, cleaning, caring. These were never tasks she complained about. They were how she showed love. For 30 years, she had done this quietly, without expecting applause. As she set plates on the table, she glanced toward the stairs, waiting for her husband to come down. There was a small pause in her heart. Lately, he had been distant. Not cruel, not loud, just far away. Conversations had become short. Eye contact rare. But she pushed the thought aside. Everyone goes through phases, she told herself. 30 years is a long time. Love changes shape. She believed today would remind them both of what they had built together. When he finally entered the kitchen, she looked up with a gentle smile. He nodded in return, his expression neutral. No warmth, but no coldness either. She tried not to read into it. She asked if he slept well. He answered briefly. She offered coffee. He accepted without comment. They sat across from each other, the table between them holding more space than it used to. She spoke about the evening plans, the guests, the food. He listened, or at least seemed to. His eyes moved around the room, avoiding hers. Still, she felt hopeful. After breakfast, the house became busy. Relatives helped with final arrangements. The living room was rearranged to make space. Soft music played in the background. The smell of food slowly filled the air. The woman moved from room to room, checking details, offering help, smiling often. People greeted her warmly. They praised her dedication, her kindness, her strength. They spoke about how lucky her husband was. She accepted the words with grace, though she did not feel the need for praise. She already knew what she had given. As afternoon turned into evening, she went upstairs to prepare herself. She had chosen her outfit days ago. It was elegant but modest, comfortable yet graceful. She stood in front of the mirror again, adjusting the fabric, smoothing her hair. She thought about the younger version of herself. The woman who once stood nervous and hopeful on her wedding day. That woman had dreams. Not of luxury or fame, but of partnership. Of building a life side by side. of growing old together. She felt she had done her part. From downstairs, she could hear guests arriving. Laughter echoed through the halls. Glasses clinked. Voices blended together in celebration. Her heart warmed. This was what she loved. Family. Togetherness. Shared moments. She took a deep breath and walked back down. The room filled with people who had watched their journey. Some had known them since the beginning. Others came later, through work, through family connections, through life itself. Everyone was dressed well, smiling, carrying gifts and kind words. The woman moved through the crowd, greeting each guest personally. She asked about their lives, their children, their health. She listened carefully. She always did. Even tonight, she thought of others before herself. Her husband stood near the center of the room, speaking with friends. He looked confident, relaxed. She noticed how easily he laughed with them. A small, quiet question formed in her mind, but she pushed it away. Not tonight, she thought. Tonight is about us. The table was soon full of food, prepared with care. Guests complimented the taste. Someone raised a glass and spoke about commitment, about long marriages being rare and valuable. Applause followed. The woman felt emotion rise in her chest. She looked at her husband, expecting to share that moment. He smiled, but his eyes did not meet hers. Still she clapped along, telling herself that not every expression of love looks the same. As the night continued, more stories were shared. People spoke of the past, of challenges overcome, of happy memories. The woman remembered nights of worry, times of sickness, moments when money was tight. She remembered standing strong when things felt like they might fall apart. She remembered choosing patience when anger would have been easier. The celebration grew warmer, more emotional. The lighting softened. Music slowed. Everyone waited for the couple to speak. It was tradition. 30 years deserved words. Her heart beat faster, but she felt ready. She believed this would be a moment of reflection and gratitude. A moment where all the quiet sacrifices would finally be seen. She stood beside her husband as attention turned toward them. The room became quiet. Faces full of expectation looked their way. The woman smiled, her hands folded neatly, her posture calm. This was the night everyone had been waiting for. And she believed, with her whole heart, that it would end in love. The room slowly settled after the earlier laughter. Glasses were refilled. People leaned back into their chairs, relaxed and smiling. The celebration felt complete, warm, and safe. Soft music played in the background, and the lights reflected gently off the decorations. It was the kind of evening people would remember as joyful. Someone near the front suggested that the husband should speak. It felt natural. Expected. After all, 30 years of marriage deserved words. A few people clapped lightly, encouraging him. He smiled and stepped forward, holding his glass loosely in his hand. The woman stood beside him at first, then moved slightly back to give him space. She looked at him with quiet trust. This was his moment. Their moment. He cleared his throat and began with a joke. Something about how long 30 years really felt. The crowd laughed. He smiled wider, clearly enjoying the attention. He spoke about early mistakes, about learning to compromise, about how marriage was not easy. People nodded. Some laughed again. It all felt harmless. The woman relaxed a little. Her shoulders dropped. Her heart beat more calmly. This was going well. He continued, adding small humorous details. Stories that guests recognized. Shared moments that made people smile. The room stayed light. Comfortable. Then his voice slowed. The pause was small, almost unnoticed at first. He took a sip from his glass and looked around the room. His eyes moved over the guests, the decorations, the food, the faces watching him closely. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. He said that 30 years was a long time. People nodded again, expecting reflection. He said that sometimes people grow, and sometimes they feel stuck. A few guests shifted in their seats, but still no one worried. Then he laughed, not warmly, but sharply, and said that he felt trapped. The word landed hard. The woman felt it before she fully understood it. A tightness in her chest, a strange pressure behind her eyes. She looked at him, waiting for him to soften it, to explain, to turn it back into a joke. He did not. He continued speaking, his words slower now, clearer. He said he had given enough years. He said he wanted more from life. Something different. Something exciting. The room began to quiet. Then he turned slightly and gestured toward her. He said that she was 60 now. The number echoed in the silence. He said it again, louder, with a half smile, as if it were funny. He said she was too old. No one laughed. He added that he did not want to spend the rest of his life feeling limited. That he wanted a different future. A different kind of happiness. The air in the room changed completely. The woman could not move. Her feet felt stuck to the floor. Her hands went cold. Her face felt hot, as if every eye had turned into a light shining directly on her. She looked at the faces around her. Shock. Discomfort. Confusion. Some guests stared at the floor. Others looked at her with wide eyes, not knowing what to do. She looked back at her husband. He did not look back. He kept talking, explaining himself, justifying his feelings. He spoke as if he were alone, as if the woman beside him were not a person but an idea. A problem. Something holding him back. Her ears rang. Words reached her, but slowly, as if they were coming from far away. She heard him say he deserved more. That life was short. That he was done pretending. Pretending. That word cut deepest. 30 years of effort passed through her mind in flashes. Early mornings. Late nights. Silent sacrifices. Standing beside him when he failed. Holding the family together when things broke. And now, in front of everyone, she was being reduced to her age. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She wanted to speak, to stop him, to say something, anything. But her body would not respond. She felt small. Exposed. As if the room had shrunk around her. The silence grew heavy. Someone near the back shifted uncomfortably. Another guest coughed. No one interrupted. No one knew how. The husband finally stopped speaking. He lifted his glass again, as if closing a normal speech. But no one clapped. No one smiled. The woman stood there, frozen. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest. She felt tears pressing against her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. Her mind raced. Was this really happening? On this night? In front of everyone she loved? She had imagined many endings to this evening. None of them looked like this. The warmth she felt earlier was gone. In its place was a deep, sharp ache. Not just pain, but humiliation. Public. Unavoidable. She became aware of her breathing. Shallow. Fast. She forced herself to inhale slowly, trying to stay upright. Her husband stepped slightly away from her, as if creating distance even now. That movement hurt more than his words. She realized something in that moment. This was not a mistake. This was not anger. This was planned. He had chosen this moment. This audience. Her hands trembled at her sides. Still, she did not cry. She looked around the room once more. She saw sympathy, shock, even anger in some faces. But no one could undo what had been said. The celebration had turned into a memory she would never forget. She felt invisible and exposed at the same time. Time seemed to stretch. Seconds felt like minutes. Finally, someone suggested sitting down. Chairs scraped against the floor. Conversations did not restart. The woman lowered herself slowly into a chair, her movements stiff, controlled. Inside, Everything felt broken. She stared at the table in front of her, at the untouched food, the decorations that now felt meaningless. This was the moment that changed everything. And she knew, deep inside, that her life would never look the same again. The silence after his words felt heavier than any sound. It pressed down on the room, making every movement feel too loud, every breath too visible. No one knew where to look. The laughter from earlier felt like it belonged to another night, another life. People began to move slowly, carefully, as if sudden motion might make things worse. Some guests picked up their phones, pretending to check messages. Others stared at their plates, suddenly interested in food they no longer wanted. A few whispered to the person beside them, their voices low but not low enough. The woman noticed everything. She noticed how conversations stopped when she looked up. How eyes turned away the moment they met hers. How people who had hugged her warmly earlier now kept their distance, unsure of what was appropriate. She stayed still. Her body felt stiff, like it no longer belonged to her. Inside, her emotions crashed into each other. Shock, pain, confusion, disbelief, but she did not let them show. Her face remained calm. Too calm. As if it had learned this skill over many years. She folded her hands neatly in her lap. She kept her back straight. She reminded herself to breathe. In her mind, memories came rushing forward without warning. She saw herself years ago, younger, standing in a small kitchen while children slept in the next room. She remembered counting money carefully, making sure there was enough for bills and school needs. She remembered encouraging him when work was uncertain, when his confidence was low, when he came home frustrated and silent. She remembered sitting beside him during failures, telling him tomorrow would be better. She remembered giving up her own dreams quietly, not because she was forced, but because she believed in shared sacrifice. Because she believed marriage meant standing together, even when it was hard. She remembered being the steady one. Those memories did not make her cry. They made her chest ache. Around her, guests slowly returned to small conversations, but the energy was gone. Voices were careful. Laughter did not return. The celebration had ended without anyone saying it out loud. Someone offered her water. She accepted it with a small nod and a polite smile. She thanked them softly, as if nothing had happened. Inside, she felt like she was breaking apart. She glanced toward her husband. He was standing a short distance away, speaking quietly with someone. His posture was relaxed. Too relaxed. He did not look troubled. He did not look unsure. That was when the truth became clear to her. This was not a joke. This was not a moment of poor judgment. This was planned. He had chosen this night. He had chosen this audience. He had chosen words that could not be taken back. The realization settled slowly but firmly in her chest. It hurt more than the words themselves. Because planning meant intention. It meant he had thought about this, prepared for it, and decided that her dignity was not worth protecting. She felt a wave of anger rise, sharp and sudden, but she pushed it down. Not here. Not now. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Her eyes moved around the room again. She saw sympathy in some faces, quiet support in others. She also saw curiosity, judgment, people wondering what would happen next. She refused to become a scene. She adjusted her posture slightly, lifting her chin. She reminded herself who she was. A woman who had survived worse than this. A woman who had carried responsibility without complaint for decades. Her hands shook, but only slightly. She wrapped them around the glass of water, using the coolness to steady herself. Someone asked if she was okay. She smiled. Yes, she said. Her voice sounded steady, even to her own ears. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. More memories surfaced, uninvited. School events she attended alone because he was busy. Nights she waited up for him, worried. Moments when she stood between him and criticism, defending him even when he was wrong. She had never counted these things. She had never kept score. And now all of it felt invisible. A few guests quietly began to leave, offering polite excuses. Others stayed, unsure if leaving too quickly would seem rude. The room slowly thinned, but the tension remained. She remained seated, composed, answering questions briefly, thanking people for coming. She did everything expected of her. She always had. Inside, her thoughts raced. How long had he felt this way? When did she stop being enough? Had there been signs she ignored because she chose hope over doubt? She felt foolish for believing tonight would be about gratitude. But she did not blame herself. She knew the truth. Love does not disappear because of age. Respect does not vanish with time. What had happened was not failure on her part. It was a choice he had made. That thought gave her a small sense of strength. She caught her reflection in a nearby glass surface. Her face looked calm, controlled. No tears. No shaking lips. She barely recognized the woman staring back. But she respected her. She knew that later, when the house was empty and quiet, the pain would come fully. She knew tears would fall. Questions would surface. Nights would feel long. But this moment was not for breaking. This moment was for endurance. She stood slowly, smoothing her clothing, and helped guide the remaining guests toward the end of the evening. Her movements were graceful, practiced. No one would guess the storm inside her. Her husband passed by her once, close enough for her to feel his presence. He did not speak. Neither did she. The space between them felt wider than ever. As the last guest left, the room felt empty in a new way. Not peaceful. Just hollow. She stood alone for a moment, looking at the decorations, the table, the signs of a celebration that no longer existed. She took one final deep breath. She had been humiliated publicly. But she had not been defeated. And she promised herself, silently, that this would not be the end of her story. Long before the guests arrived, before the lights were turned on and the food was placed on the table, the woman had been awake with clear purpose. That morning had not begun with surprise or excitement. It had begun with quiet focus. She had moved through the house calmly, completing small tasks with careful attention. Her hands did not shake then. Her thoughts were steady. While the rest of the day would later feel confusing and painful, those early hours had been different. Controlled. Intentional. Hidden away in a drawer upstairs was a small folder. Plain. Unmarked. Anyone who saw it would think it was ordinary paperwork. Nothing special. Nothing emotional. But it was the most important gift she had ever prepared. It was not jewelry. Not a letter filled with memories. Not something meant to bring tears or smiles. It was practical. Legal. Thought through with patience and time. She had prepared it quietly over many months. The idea had not come from anger. It had come from observation. For a long time now, she had felt a shift in the way he treated her. Not suddenly. Slowly. Respect had faded first. Small comments. Dismissive looks. Decisions made without asking her opinion. Moments where her voice seemed to disappear in the room. She noticed how he interrupted her more often. How he stopped asking how her day was. How he spoke about the future as if she were not part of it. At first, she told herself it was stress. Work pressure. Aging. Normal changes that happen in long marriages. But deep down, she knew better. She had learned to trust her instincts over the years. They had protected her many times before. So instead of arguing, instead of demanding attention or explanations, she began preparing. Quietly. She asked questions when she needed to. She listened carefully. She sought advice without drama. She read documents slowly, line by line. She made sure she understood her rights, her position, her options. She did not rush. She had spent decades being patient. She knew how to wait. That folder held proof of her contributions, records of shared assets, agreements carefully reviewed. Everything was done properly, cleanly, respectfully. No tricks. No revenge. Just protection. She had not wanted to believe she would ever need it, but she believed in being prepared. That morning, she had taken the folder out one last time. She sat at the edge of the bed, sunlight falling across the pages. She reviewed everything slowly, calmly, making sure nothing was missing. Her face had been peaceful. She placed the folder back where it belonged and closed the drawer. Then she dressed for the day. Now, hours later, after the public humiliation, that hidden gift remained untouched. As the night continued and guests slowly left, no one suspected what waited quietly upstairs. No one guessed that while he had prepared words to embarrass her, she had prepared something far more lasting. She remained composed as the evening ended. She thanked people. She offered polite smiles. She stood tall. Inside, she reflected. She thought about the many times she had chosen silence instead of confrontation. How she had noticed changes but refused to accuse without certainty. How she had given him space, hoping respect would return. She had never imagined he would choose cruelty. But she had imagined distance. That difference mattered. Her preparation had not come from bitterness. It had come from clarity. She understood now that love without respect becomes imbalance. And imbalance, if ignored, turns into harm. She felt sadness, yes. Deep sadness. But she did not feel regret for preparing herself. If anything, she felt relief. The gift was not meant to punish him. It was meant to protect her future. As the house emptied and silence returned, she walked upstairs slowly. She paused near the drawer, her hand resting briefly on the wood. Not yet, she thought. Tonight was not the moment. The gift would remain hidden a little longer. Because when she finally revealed it, it would speak louder than any speech ever could. The room was still heavy with the weight of what had been said. Even as guests moved toward the door, the tension remained, hanging in the air like unfinished business. People spoke quietly, careful with their words, unsure of what would happen next. The woman remained seated for a moment, her hands resting calmly in her lap. Her heart was still racing, but her breathing had slowed. She had given herself these few moments to settle her thoughts. She knew what most people expected now. Tears. Anger. A confrontation. She chose none of them. Slowly, she stood up. The movement caught attention immediately. Conversations stopped. A few heads turned. Her husband noticed too, his body stiffening slightly as he watched her rise. She did not rush. She walked with steady steps toward the front of the room, toward the small space that had been used for speeches earlier. Each step felt heavy but controlled. She felt eyes on her from every direction, yet she did not look down. Her calm surprised them. It surprised him most of all. She reached the front and paused. For a brief moment, she looked out at the room. Faces filled with uncertainty stared back at her. Some showed concern. Others showed respect. A few held quiet shame for having witnessed what they had. She took a gentle breath. Then she spoke. Her voice was steady, not loud, not shaking, clear and composed. She thanked everyone for coming. She thanked them for sharing the evening, for the years of friendship, for being part of their lives. Her words were simple and sincere. There was no bitterness in her tone. She spoke about 30 years. About time passing quickly. About shared memories and lessons learned. She acknowledged that life changes people, that paths do not always remain the same. Her husband watched closely now. His earlier confidence had faded. He did not interrupt. He could not. She did not defend herself. She did not accuse him. She did not explain her pain. That silence was deliberate. Instead, she spoke with dignity, with control, with strength that came from knowing who she was. She said she was grateful for the years they had shared, for what they had built together, For the family and the experiences that could never be erased. There was no apology in her words. No pleading. No anger. The room remained completely silent. Then she paused. She looked briefly toward her husband, not with hurt, not with anger, but with clarity. And then she said she also had something to share. The shift was immediate. People leaned in slightly. A few exchanged glances. The energy in the room changed again, but this time it was different. Focused. Alert. Her husband's expression tightened. He had not expected this. Not this calm. Not this confidence. She did not reach for anything yet. She did not explain. She simply let the words settle. Her posture remained relaxed. Her hands steady at her sides. She looked like someone who had already made peace with her decision. Whatever she was about to say, it was clear she was ready. And for the first time that night, the power in the room was no longer his. It was hers. The room remained completely silent as she stood there, her words still hanging in the air. She did not rush the moment. She had learned long ago that silence, when used with purpose, could be stronger than shouting. She turned slightly and reached for the small folder that had been brought forward. It was plain, simple, almost unimpressive. No ribbon. No decoration. Nothing that suggested drama. She held it calmly in her hands. "This is my gift," she said. Her voice did not shake. There was no edge to it. Just clarity. She handed the folder to him. For a brief second, he looked confused. This was not what he had expected. He took it slowly, unsure, his earlier confidence already beginning to slip. He opened it, glancing down at the pages inside. As his eyes moved across the documents, something changed in his expression. The woman continued speaking, not loudly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. She explained that over the years, many decisions had been made carefully. That certain assets, properties, and accounts were legally placed in her name. Not secretly. Not unfairly. Properly. With full understanding of the law. She said she had done this because she believed in being responsible. Because she believed that security mattered. Especially for someone who had spent years supporting others instead of herself. She did not accuse him. She did not raise her voice. She simply stated facts. She explained that she had prepared for the possibility that respect might disappear, even if love once existed. That preparation was not bitterness. It was awareness. The room began to shift. Guests leaned closer, not out of curiosity now, but realization. This was not a dramatic outburst. This was not revenge. This was foresight. She said she hoped she would never need these documents. That she had wanted to grow old peacefully. But she also believed that dignity meant never allowing herself to be left with nothing. Her husband's face had gone pale. The relaxed posture he once held was gone. His grip on the folder tightened slightly, his jaw stiff. He looked up at her, searching her face. She met his gaze without fear. She explained that she was sharing this now not to embarrass him, but to be honest. To show that she was not helpless. That she had never been invisible, even when she chose to be quiet. A murmur moved through the room. Not judgment. Not excitement. Respect. People understood. This was not about winning. It was about standing. She finished by saying that independence was not something she suddenly found tonight. It was something she had built slowly, patiently, over many years. She stepped back slightly, giving space. The power in the room had shifted completely. His confidence had drained away, replaced by uncertainty. He looked smaller now, not because she had attacked him, but because the truth had. She did not smile. She did not wait for a reaction. She simply stood there, calm and steady, knowing that for the first time that night, her future was firmly in her own hands. The evening ended without ceremony. There was no music to close the night, no final toast, no laughter to soften what had happened. Guests left quietly, one by one, offering brief words, gentle touches, and looks filled with understanding. The celebration that had been planned for months dissolved in less than an hour. The house felt different as it emptied. Not peaceful, not calm, but honest. The decorations remained, untouched, like reminders of a moment that had changed everything. Family members gathered in small groups near the door and in corners of the room. Some spoke in low voices, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Others said nothing at all, their faces showing shock that words could not express. A few relatives walked directly to the woman. They hugged her without asking questions. They told her she had done the right thing, that they admired her strength, that they were proud of her. She thanked them quietly. Others kept their distance, not because they blamed her, but because the truth had unsettled them. It forced them to see things they had never questioned before. Long marriages, silent sacrifices, the cost of being taken for granted. She did not judge them for their silence. Everyone processes truth differently. Her husband stood apart. The folder remained in his hands, now closed, as if closing it might undo what it contained. His face showed confusion, then frustration, then something closer to fear. He had expected control. He had not expected consequences. Whispers followed him as people passed by. Not cruel whispers, but cautious ones. The kind that change how someone is seen. Friends who once laughed easily with him now avoided eye contact. Respect had shifted, and he could feel it. He tried to speak to a few people, but conversations ended quickly. Polite excuses replaced friendly warmth. For the first time that night, he felt alone. The woman watched none of this closely. Her attention was inward now. She felt tired, deeply tired, but also clear. The shock had settled into certainty. She helped clear a few plates. She thanked the remaining guests. She moved through the house with quiet purpose. She did not argue. She did not explain herself further. She did not need to. When the last family member left, the house fell silent. The kind of silence that does not feel empty, but final. She stood near the doorway for a moment, listening to the sound of the door closing behind the final guest. Then she turned and walked away. She did not look back. Upstairs, she changed into comfortable clothes. She washed her face slowly, carefully, as if grounding herself in the moment. She looked at her reflection once more. She saw sadness. She also saw relief. Downstairs, her husband remained seated, staring at nothing in particular. The future he had imagined no longer looked simple. Financial certainty had shifted. Social standing had cracked. Emotional control had slipped from his grasp. He had underestimated her. Not because she was quiet, but because she was prepared. She walked past him without stopping. There was nothing left to say tonight. Words would not improve what had already been understood. She went to a room that felt like her own and closed the door. In that moment, she felt something steady settle inside her. She had protected herself. She had chosen dignity. And no matter what came next, she knew she would face it on her own terms. Time moved forward, even though it did not feel that way at first. The days after the anniversary passed slowly, quietly, without celebration or noise. The house felt larger than before, but also lighter in a way the woman had not expected. She took her time. She did not rush to explain herself to anyone. She did not rush to fix what had broken. She allowed herself space to think, to feel, and to rest. For the first time in many years, her choices were guided only by what she needed. There were difficult moments. Mornings when memories returned without warning. Evenings that felt long and unfamiliar. But there was also peace in knowing she no longer had to prove her worth to someone who refused to see it. Slowly, she began rebuilding her life. Not dramatically. Not loudly. She focused on small things first. Her routine. Her health. Her interests. She spent time with people who respected her presence and listened when she spoke. She discovered how much energy she had spent for years trying to hold something together alone. She realized she was not weak for staying as long as she had. She was strong for knowing when to stand. Age no longer felt like a label placed on her by someone else. It became simply part of her story. Proof of experience. Of survival. Of wisdom earned through time. She learned an important truth. Love without respect is not love. Care without dignity is not care. And silence, when chosen with awareness, can be powerful. She understood now that preparing for the future did not mean expecting the worst. It meant valuing herself enough to stay protected, no matter what others chose to do. What she had done was not bitterness. It was wisdom. She carried herself differently now. Not colder. Just clearer. She spoke when she needed to. She said no without guilt. She trusted herself. People noticed the change. Some admired it. Some were uncomfortable with it. She accepted both reactions without concern. Her life was no longer shaped by someone else's approval. Looking back, she did not wish for revenge. She did not wish for apologies. She wished only that women like her would remember their value before someone tried to define it for them. The betrayal had hurt, but it had also revealed something important. Strength does not always shout. Sometimes, it stands quietly, prepared, and unbreakable. And that was the lesson she carried forward. Aging does not reduce value. Preparation is not bitterness. And dignity, once chosen, can never be taken away.